Hello everyone, and welcome to another Daily Muppet. Obviously things are going a bit challenging, and I wanted to make this video just to kind of discuss everything. There's been a lot of news today, go over some negatives, some positives, and kind of recap. I think it's a frustrating time for everyone, but let's just run through it in order, and I promise we'll cover all the latest things that have come out. And I want to include it in that, give a little bit of positivity towards certain things. I know that may not be what people want right now, but I think it is. There are some things to feel positive about, and some things to, just get some perspective on. Let's first talk about Dean Henderson. We spoke about probably 2 months ago. It came as a surprise, but we revealed that Dean Henderson was on the sale list, and I've expected this for some time. And I don't totally get how it makes sense in line with how Ten Hag plays, but perhaps there are other reasons for Dean Henderson to be on the way out. The report today is that he has agreed to a loan with option to buy to Forest. I think the simple answer here from the information we had and from this coming out, and there being a lot of rumors of deals that have now moved forward, is that they'd like to solve the goalkeeper problem next year and don't feel that Dean Henderson is necessarily the answer. David De Gea, they just don't feel they can put him on the bench or anything like that. So if they send Dean on loan and he impresses, then he'll be purchased for the $20 million, and maybe that'll help fund a new goalkeeper next summer. There's just too much to do right now, despite concerns over David De Gea. With regards to Frankie de Jong, I know everybody wants to panic and worry, and there's reports of walking away, and there's reports of this and that. Here's what I know. There's a price that Barcelona want. They want to get 80 million euros out of this deal. United only want to pay 60. They offered 60 million plus 10 million before. That's where things have been. It's not that far off. In order to get a deal, they need a bit more upfront and realistic add-ons that can be triggered, and then maybe you sweeten it with some Ballon d'Or clauses on top of that to just make the overall package look bigger for Barcelona. But the fact of the matter is Barcelona won about 80 million in what they feel will be sure money, and they want it to not be, those add-ons to not be something that takes 5 years to trigger. So you're looking at a couple ways they could do this. Offer something like 70 now and 10 in decent add-ons. Go 60-20 as they were discussing, but make the add-ons more achievable. The first 10, maybe it's 20 appearances. You see, something that gets triggered sooner. Either way, Barcelona wants 70 million within the next 12 months, and they want 10 million soon after that. So you're going to have to structure a deal that makes that work. This is a deal that should be feasible, but there's no guarantees, obviously, with United of actually stumping up for that. They know that the deal can be made. They wanted to get it done. And there's more going on to this than meets the eye. I've not yet heard anything to indicate it won't happen. There's still confidence on both sides, even though United have been saying they were willing to walk away if they don't get a good deal. It may not be as quick as we all wanted, hoped for, and as United intended. Last week I was told they wanted him done around the 16th, which is tomorrow. Obviously, that chances of that happening are looking fairly slim. But as everything with United, things don't necessarily move as quickly as they want them to, and the timelines are not that important. The major timeline that matters is, of course, Frankie de Jong coming in for preseason. Barcelona have their economic votes tomorrow, and then we will see what happens. And there could certainly be a chance that they want to line up deals for immediately after, as they will indicate they need sales following the situation in order to register their signings and to register purchases. Apparently, they're about to make a new offer for Lewandowski. They're looking at other deals. And so it still just makes sense that they're looking to get a sale of Frankie de Jong. But not only that, I can say with some certainty that Barcelona want to sell de Jong. And however you want to take that, you can take it. But Barcelona want to sell de Jong. Okay? They want to move him. They want to get him out of there. And so I think that, there's no reason to panic on this one yet. I know it's very frustrating. I've been more frustrated than anyone with regards to it. I said this last week on Monday before we lost out on Nunez to Liverpool, that there was a danger in holding everything up for this single deal and that it could cause a lot of problems for United in moving forward with the other targets. And there's another one we'll discuss in a minute. But at the same time, Jong is important, very important to the squad, to the team, and to the summer plans as a whole. And there's nothing to say that it won't happen yet. Okay? With regards to the other midfielder names going around, I do think there's a chance United are no longer targeting a striker and that they could push for multiple midfielders. They made an offer for Christian Eriksen. It's a bit of a curious one. To me, if he comes in with a De Jong, you're seeing Van de Beek maybe pushed into a forward position where Ten Hag has previously commented he is at his best. Perhaps that reduces the need for a forward, or perhaps they want that in addition to just take care of the whole kind of bunch of players for the attack this year and have a lot of options. You get that name Vitinha, I think is where that becomes relevant, and I'll talk about him more in a minute as well. Ten Hag has previously commented that Donny van de Beek was at his best in a forward position, and so getting someone like Eriksen or Vitinha perhaps in addition to De Jong, but not as a defensive midfielder, which doesn't make any sense, will push Van de Beek into a forward position more, and it could work out. So I think that's obviously a little bit flexible, and things are confusing once you get past purely the De Jong situation, because it's not a clear target like Nunez. But let's move on to Timber, because that was the other clear third target for Erik Ten Hag. The reports today from Verwijs in the Netherlands that he's more likely to stay at the moment coming out, and honestly, this shouldn't be that surprising. On the one hand, it's frustrating because, again, United could have pushed forward on a deal 4 weeks ago. They met as representatives in the middle of May. They have the outline of the deal and the terms it would take to get a deal done. Contract and personal terms would not be an issue. The fee for the club would be not bad either, and especially with missing out on a striker. But again, they've not pushed forward with a deal. Now, could he have still said no and rejected it and said, I want to take 6 weeks to make a decision? Sure, but you like to see them pushing for certain decisions and pushing for things to happen ahead of time, so that if it's not going to happen, they can move on to other targets. Now, I think that perhaps they've gotten wind of this and they've been thinking with this. On May 31st, I mentioned that in a video that if Timber was going to come in as a center back, I don't see it happening. He does not want to come in as cover. That's a big problem and something that will need resolution. There's still a chance it could happen, but it's going to be about Erik Ten Hag convincing him. But how is he going to come in as a center back with Varane, Maguire, and Lindelof? It's as cover, and the minutes might be limited, and Louis van Gaal's in his ear telling him he might lose his spot for Netherlands and all of that for the World Cup if he's not getting minutes, and it's kind of a perfect storm of a problem there, and that's why I've always felt if he was going to come in, it would have to be as right back. That's my opinion, because I just don't see it happening otherwise due to his personal needs and wants, and so there is a chance this would really be a problem. This was always a possibility, and why I've mentioned recently to keep an eye on Dumfries, Malaysia, and Torres, maybe looking at some other targets at the back instead of Jurrien Timber. I still think, again, that there's chances it's not totally off, but it's really going to be about Ten Hag convincing him, and we may not find out now for a few weeks. You hope that they move on to some other targets. But again, if these deals are there, you would wish that they would push ahead and get them done instead of waiting on the Jong situation. At the same time, the defense has always been listed as the lower priority for midfield and attack, so it kind of makes sense. You know what I'd really like them to do? There are 3 players that Ten Hag apparently really liked from Ajax that we've heard all along. There's been a lot of names, but these are the 3 that I always felt were solid from our information. Timber, Antony, and we'll talk about Antony in a moment, and Martinez. I would love them to sign Martinez. He can play as a 6. He can play as a center back. We need a 6. There's no real 6s on the market. But reports, that he could come in. He would only cost about 30 million euros. Not a bad signing to shore up at the back. And I think would be a decent idea with a lot less pressure that could come in and give us options. So maybe they'll turn to something like that. There are reports of Pellistri getting a chance this summer. And again, I want to talk about Antony. I mentioned as well before that if Antony is looking more likely, maybe that means no to Timber, that they're not going to buy 2. It's messy. I wish I could be more certain. I wish I could say things that were more certain, but I don't know. I'm not sure if the club do. I don't know if anybody does. Outside of De Jong, it's messy. Then you also have the situation of Garner potentially needing to stay at United unless a loan for Henderson becomes an obligation. And at the same time, there could be, another club that he goes on loan to. With regards to Vitinha, I believe his name has been brought up by Mendes in conversation. I don't think United have a problem being linked to him. I think there's legitimate interest. But I don't think he's an alternate. He could be an alternate De Jong. I don't see how he's a defensive midfielder. He could be an alternate to Eriksen. If they really, for some reason, want another attacking mid type on top, then maybe he's, an alternate to Eriksen. Again, there's other clubs, Arsenal, Liverpool, and others interested, and it's being played up by Mendes. So we have to be careful. Maybe he's a backup if De Jong fails. It's hard to say. I'm still going to mention Nunes from Sporting as a defensive midfielder. With everything going on, with all this prioritizing of a midfield and attack, and Timber maybe being off the table, maybe they don't sign a defender at all. Maybe they move ahead and get 2 mids and 2 attackers, and they sign Nunes and De Jong and Eriksen and Antony, and you just have a load of midfield and attack options. You could move a couple out, maybe 1 or 2 next summer, depending, and then you just need the 1 striker next year to kind of get the whole attack sorted and the whole midfield sorted. Maybe that's the plan. It's not a bad plan. It's not a bad idea. I feel like we really badly need a right back, but at the same time, maybe this is the way they want to do things. I'm not currently pulling the panic button on anything at this stage, pushing the panic button. As far as I can tell, United understand what it would take for a few deals. Outs will be important and are being explored for Tellez, which would be replaced by Malaysia, Bailly, Wan-Bissaka, which would result in signings at the back. The midfield and the forward positions are not really contingent on outs, so the focus is always going to be there. But those outs will free up potentially deals for players like Malaysia and Torres if we want them. Not all of them are going to come in, but these are the deals that can be done, and there is real interest in occurring. I mentioned before that with no contingencies, to sign a midfielder like De Jong, with no contingencies, you don't have to sell to buy. Midfielder like De Jong and an attacker like Eriksen or Antony coming in make more sense in terms of the quicker deals. And, here's my perspective on it. De Jong is obviously the biggest deal of the summer. And the other ones should be much simpler and faster to resolve in general. So I kind of get it. The issue I have is if the other deals are there, they should simply be moving them forward. We have until July 3rd or so to wrap them up to get players involved in preseason. And some of them can be done quickly, especially deals with Ajax, for example, or Eriksen signing on July 1st. So to give a slight tinge of positivity, if De Jong happens in the next 10 days, then Eriksen signs on July 1st. That's the offers there. Could be done in 1 day. And they decide they want Antony, and they know the price with Ajax, and the personal terms wouldn't be an issue for him. Then they could get that done pretty quickly. Ajax deals can move fast. And then if they make some sales throughout summer, then they can move on Malaysia and things. But you could still have by preseason Antony, Eriksen, and De Jong, and that's pretty transformative still. I know it's not everything, but it's very good. So what we cannot have, the biggest thing that we cannot have, is De Jong drag on, and only then the serious work starts for the other deals. The deals must move quickly into finalizing. The basic understanding of these deals and the players that are out there is understood, but they cannot take weeks to start getting into talks and negotiating, going back and forth, in order for Ten Hag to get a summer that he wants. I tell you a couple positives again on this. Malaysia is cheap, £15 million. Pau Torres, they already know a fee, 50 million euros. He has a release clause at 60. They know they're not going to get. So 50 million is about the cost. Nunes has a 40 million release clause. Vitinha has a 40 million release clause. Eriksen is free. Antony's at Ajax. All of these signings are, in fact, ones that could be done very quickly without much haggling, without much discussion needed or even possible if and when De Jong comes through. And so I'm still going to reserve judgment. I was speaking to someone and he said, look, because I said it's getting kind of ugly out there with Timber potentially rejecting us. Obviously, Nunes is following through. And he said, look, the fact is that at this point, United can deliver. The ownership can deliver these signings or they can deliver excuses. And obviously we don't know which one yet. But things are really at a precipice at United. And I'm not trying to be overly dramatic and make it all about signings because I want to talk about something else in a minute. But they are. Fans are fed up. It's probably the lowest point it's been in a decade. And again, it's not all about signings, but they have to deliver some major help here. And they've created a culture at the club and an environment at a club where the value of the club is very much determined by the players that are there, by the engagement, by all of that. It shouldn't be that way, but it is. And they've lost a lot of big names. And they need to bring some good players in because it's going to start affecting their economic situation. The stock prices, yes, it's all been driven down by the market, and I don't want to get too much on it. But good signings will improve it. A good outlook for the future will improve it. And they're going to need some of these things. Big players like Frankie de Jong will improve the situation and provide an increase in the value, but also you get sponsors more interested, sponsors more looking around, more people willing to pay money into the club. They don't want to be associated with it if it's a disaster. There's no good outlook. Players are rejecting left and right, and fans are unhappy. And we've obviously had a lot of unrest and unhappiness before, but things are at the lowest point, and so it is important, and that's why I think they kind of have to deliver. This is a tipping point at United now. And so, when it comes down to the de Jong thing, unlike Timber, we know the player is fine with coming now, is happy to join now. The other club wants to sell. There's nobody else in for him, unlike Nunez, that'll drive the price way up. It's purely economic. And in those situations, they usually come through at the end of the day. I mean, look, they sanctioned £80 million for Harry Maguire in the end for Ollie because he wanted him, after spending $60 million earlier in the summer. Everything aside, they usually come through on these kind of deals. So let's see in the next day or two, because we could get a lot of news still. And if not, it doesn't mean it's over unless they decide in the next day or two not to pursue anymore. So the other thing I want to say is, look, it's not all about transfers. And one thing I want to remind everyone during these kind of frustrating times, during the summer, it all feels like it's all about transfers because there's no football and all of that, was that Ten Hag was brought in to be a top manager. He was brought in to be as a fantastic coach. And the goal was, and how everybody looked at it, including most of you watching, following, and listening, is that he was the best coach out there and a potentially world-class coach. Better than anything we've had since Fergie's left. Many of you really wanted him. The same squad we have now, with a few changes, most notably Ronaldo for Cavani. We lost number 11. Obviously, Pogba's gone. Matic are gone. But they weren't really that influential. In fact, we got a better points total when they were not there. In 2021, that team got 74 points in 2021 and made a Europa final. Got second place, even though second wouldn't usually be 74 points, but it got 74 points in 2021 and made a Europa League final with Ollie. And that was before adding Varane and before adding Sancho. At worst, the squad is as good as it was before. And I know that people don't feel that way, but with an improved coach alone and the same squad we have now, that tally, I think we'd see more consistency, we'd see a similar points tally, and we'd see better results in cup games. And I think that's achievable with the current squad under Ten Hag. If you add in De Jong, it transforms the midfield. If you add in Eriksen, it gives you redundancy with Bruno and allows him to play out wide and gives you more options, so you're not overly reliant on one creator. If you bring in Antony, it's another young attacker. And overall, yes, if you can't get everything you need and you're missing on targets, it's disappointing. But I think we have to look at this summer and this next year as somewhat like Jose's first summer. And I'm not talking about first year, and I'm not talking about bringing the standards down. I'm talking about the fact that we are not competing for a title next year. We are not in Champions League next year. This season is probably the worst possible outcome in terms of attracting players, in terms of signings, in terms of everything. The worst possible, the worst it's been ever. It will not be this bad next year. And so since it's not a year we're competing for a title and it's not a year we're competing for Champions League, if we can win a cup, Europa, get into top 4 with a good points total, and develop a real style of play, next summer the recruitment is going to be much better. And that's not just like an empty promise. We attracted Ronaldo, Varane, and Sancho last year because our results were good and because things looked like they were on the up. Realize that for a moment. We got Ronaldo, Varane, and Sancho last year because things looked good. So it's not empty words. If we have a promising year, things are on the back, things are on the up and up. We're in Champions League again. We win something, hopefully. We didn't even win a trophy and we were able to get those players. And we win something. We will attract better talents again, and it will be much easier. It's not going to be solved in 1 year, but with some basic signings and most importantly, Ten Hag coming in and coaching, this team should be capable of 75 to 80 points and competing for trophies, even if it's not the major ones this year. And I know some people will disagree, but look, the last season was just bad, and if you ask people about United, and many of them are not people who are just PR for the Glazers or Murtaugh, as a coach, Ralph Rangnick was disastrous, and the team is capable of so much more. One of the things I've mentioned before is that United doesn't have continuity. A bigger problem I see than talent is continuity. When you sub on Pogba for half the games and Fred for the other games and these guys for this game and these guys for this game, the style changes every single game. And it makes it so hard to have consistency, and it's one of the biggest reasons we've struggled. Well, with somewhat clearing house and a few signings coming in, I think you'll see a much better continuity and a much better rate of consistency with a real philosophy every single game, and it's going to pay big dividends. So from a footballing perspective, I'm just saying let's step back and calm down. If things fall apart on Jong and these things happen, then we can start to get real upset. But this is just me trying to be positive on this and look at it. It's hard. People argued with me when I said we did miss on Nunez and it was an error, and that waiting on Jong is a problem. And I wasn't just talking about Nunez, I was talking about what can happen overall. And now it's somewhat happening with Timber too. And it could happen with other targets. And I've been concerned all along about waiting on this, but that's where we are. And it's frustrating. We've passed as much info as we can, but at the final end of it, it's not up to us. And the people who pass info and that give us the info, and journalists who write about things, it's not up to them either. And we're all as frustrated as everybody else with everything that's gone on, but the window isn't over. Frenkie de Jong would be a transformative signing, probably, as I've said before. Getting him in would be probably the best possible signing that could have happened this summer. They will make more signings after that. We can survive not getting Timber. We can survive not getting Nunez. If we get Frenkie de Jong in, which is still possible and still should happen, and bring in a couple more good, young, hungry players in positions that we need, I think there's a really good chance for things to be quite positive and have a different outlook as we get into the season. If Ten Hag is not given his players for preseason, we should get upset. He was made those promises. He asked for them. But that does not mean we will fail. That does not mean he will fail. A midfielder is a massive, massive need. There are other things that are massive needs, but we will get one. We're not going to get everything in one summer, but there's still a lot to look at, a lot of positives to look at, and it's not a disaster yet. It's not a disaster at this point in time. It's not everything. We've got to start somewhere, and these things happen. It's difficult. We're never going to get everybody we wanted. We missed on Holland. We missed on Bellingham. We missed on Rice. And we still managed, again, to have a pretty good year in 2021 that could have been a lot better and attract top talents the next summer. Okay? This is a multi-year project under Ten Hag, and I said that when we're looking at hiring him. This is a multi-year project. We cannot get too stressed about 1 year. He needs some tools. He'll get some. He won't get all of them. We should still have a good year. And then the next year, I think, is time to really look at it. And I know it's crazy talking about look at next year and all of that, and it seems like it's making excuses for the club and all that. It's not. They need to deliver now, badly. They need to give him Frenkie de Jong at the minimum. But at the same time, some perspective is necessary. It's a multi-year project. If he can get Frenkie de Jong, if we can get a few other players in, if he can have his time to coach, I think we'll have a much better year than we've had, and a lot of the impatience, a lot of the frustration, a lot of the stress comes from how bad things were last season, and it will not be that bad again. And we'll revisit this in a week or two and see if somehow it's gotten worse. But in the meantime, let's just sit back a minute, get some perspective on things, and hope that they can deliver here, because they have to. The club is on a precipice here. They've got to deliver at least this major signing for Ten Hag. And for me personally, if they can do that, I'm relaxed about the rest of the window. Not that they don't need more, not that they won't get more, but I'm relaxed because it makes a big, big difference. So let's see what happens, okay? Thanks for watching. I hope this just helps in one way or another. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. I'll see you in the next video.